so much for hanging with us as we kick the week off. A big week in Minneapolis. In fact, the last couple of weeks have been very, very big when it comes to what's going on with the trial of the former Minneapolis police officer accused of killing George Floyd. And now they're in jury selection for Derek Chauvin. But what happened that was interesting going into the weekend was this big settlement, and the settlement was $27 million with Minneapolis, the city. So they agreed to that record settlement with George Floyd's family to resolve the lawsuit filed against the city and 4 cops involved in his death. And announcing the outcome, the Floyd family lawyers called it the largest pre-trial wrongful death settlement in U.S. history, which it is. And a portion of the money will be returned to the neighborhood where Floyd was arrested and where bystanders had, bystander videos showed the ex-cop pinning him by the neck to the pavement that I just mentioned, Derek Chauvin. Joining us now is Kirk Davis. He's in Seattle, and he is a personal injury and trial attorney to talk to us about what this means and what does this mean for this case, too. So, Kirk, thanks so much for coming on.
Well, thank you for having me, Kate. Great to talk to you.
So this $27 million settlement, it is a record. You're not surprised that Minneapolis, though, agreed to they wanted this settled. They wanted this done, right?
Absolutely right. It was a very unusual settlement in that they had a joint press conference right after the settlement came down. I mean, that's highly unusual. Usually the sides are quite antagonistic and don't get together and have a joint press conference with the mayor and the family attorney suing the mayor, suing the city in the same spot.
Yeah, and why do you think that was? The optics were very unique.
Well, I think it is because they want to present the front of everyone trying to work together to solve this problem, everyone in the community trying to lock arms, and this money is not only to try to help the family, but it's symbolic, making it the largest settlement, trying to heal these wounds of the community, and that's why I think we see everybody coming together.
Yeah, and I mentioned it, too, that some of that money is going to go to the neighborhood where he was arrested and where he was killed, ultimately, where he died.
Right. That is unusual. That it did happen also in 2019 in Minneapolis with the officer Noor, who, as I understand it, shot the woman from Australia, and the city made a payment there of $20 million.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, that happened too. What's interesting, Kirk, and this would be great to get your, opinion on this, is that in announcing this suit, what happened in paying this money is that now you have the Mary Moriarty, who is the former chief public defender in that county, saying it was an absolute terrible timing thing, I would say, for both sides. They're in the middle of jury selection for this murder trial of the former cop, Derek Chauvin. And what she's saying, and some others have said, is most jurors, I think, would perceive the settlement as the city's belief that he did murder George Floyd, and they are liable. What do you think of that?
I think it's a serious concern. As we were just talking about the Noor case, they waited in that case until the civil case was on hold until the criminal case was complete. Here, you worry, if you're a defense attorney, that the jury is going to think, the city's basically already admitted they're at fault. So what are we really doing here?
Yeah, and it could be even a mistrial. They could make a motion for a mistrial based on an argument that there was some kind of influence on the jury, and try to make a motion even to change venue. They could ask to have the 7 jurors who were picked to have to come back and to be re-questioned. Do you think that those are all possibilities?
Absolutely. That's what we're getting at there, trying to indicate that it would potentially prejudice the jury, Kate, if they've heard that the city has made something tantamount to an admission by this massive settlement. And so then maybe the defense is going to make that motion. They seem quite intent, though, on moving this case forward. But it would be certainly remiss of them not to take the opportunity to consider a mistrial motion.
Yeah. I wanted to talk about you because you have a unique perspective on cases and how to build cases, and you work with a lot of victims, and you work a lot with personal injury or victims' rights cases. Are you seeing an uptick in the victims' rights cases?
I am. I think across the country we are. Here in Seattle, Washington, people are more aware. I think the Me Too movement in particular, in confluence with the Black Lives Matter, it's really raised the profile of these types of cases. People are realizing that they have a voice, they can be heard, and obtain justice.
So from your perspective, because Kirk, there's a lot of people that don't do trials anymore, and you have done trials. You're a trial attorney. Are you seeing, when you see somebody and you decide if there's a case or not, how do you what's that like behind the scenes? How do you decide if, there's enough here that we can go for it, especially on the victim's rights side?
First impressions are pretty important. You understand who the person is, you take a history, and your first impression is, does this make sense? And then you look for corroboration. What are the police reports from the time that this happened? What do the friends say? What do the relatives say? How am I going to go about proving this case, gathering the witnesses, gathering the evidence? Certainly, though, the first impression is critical for me.
Yeah, right. So that's how you decide. You decide when you see someone, because that's the thing, and you look at what they're saying, whether this is something that you can actually take on or not.
Absolutely. And, it's a question of sometimes we have to go back many, many years. Here in Washington State, we're fortunate. We're one of the states where there, for example, been instances of child sex abuse. The statute of limitations is such here in our state that the clock does not start running until the victim puts the harm together with the act. So people could go years and not understand, why am I having all these problems, drug abuse, things like that. And then they get into therapy, and lo and behold, the light comes on. Well, now the clock starts ticking. So we may have to go back many, many years. That's not uncommon at all, to go and find documents and witnesses. So it is quite an investigative puzzle.
And for you, because you have 15 years on the prosecution side and then jump into private practice, does that help you because you've been able to look at both sides of it?
For sure. I know exactly what we're looking at when I'm looking at police reports and speaking to police officers and witnesses, and have familiarity with how to build a criminal case, and that really gives me a leg up, I think, in putting the civil cases together.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for spending time with us, and we have people that listen to us in the Washington area. You can always go to Kirk's website, kirkdavislaw.com. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kate.
We'll wait and see what happens now in this case. If there is something that ends up being filed for a mistrial, a change of venue, that kind of thing, I don't know. I mean, I think like he said, I think their intent in making this move forward. However, if they can get the jury, if they get the jury back in and they start questioning and re-questioning them, that could be a whole different thing. So it's interesting because even at the press conference announcing the settlement, the city attorney said, We're trying to be respectful of the criminal proceedings that are now underway, and we're in the middle of jury selection. I think it would be very wise for all of us to refrain from commenting on something that's ongoing. And so it's very much, here's what happened, get in, get out. And I think that was on purpose because of the fact of where they are at this point in the jury and moving forward. And if there is change of venue or there's a mistrial, can you imagine if there's a mistrial, then they start all over again. So I will be watching this to see if they try to reset that clock. I'm thinking not, but think about the attorney representing, think about the people that are representing the officers, and especially Chauvin's defense. They would certainly be looking for something to say, well, listen, this was huge and everybody knows about this. And so doesn't that taint the process? And if they can prove it, and depending on the judge, I mean, who knows, we could be wrong on that. And even if there's the press to move forward, it might not be that easy going forward. All right, it is Women's History Month, so I want to celebrate some female authors that are unique in the various genres that they're in. Coming up next, Celeste Grow, who is so interesting and has written a book called The Adventures of Winston the Little Black Poodle. Winston Runs Away. I know how she feels. Guinness tried to run away today.